All right, man, so let's talk about the Houston Texans here for a little bit. The Texans, of course, made big news already this offseason, brought in DeMeco Ryans, probably the best coaching hire out of all the new head coaching additions this offseason. So great job by Houston there. They have the number 2 overall draft pick. A lot of rumors and speculation flying around about who the Texans will get there. But there's been more interesting news about another potentially massive move the Texans could make as we head into the free agency period that could have just as big an impact as any of the other moves they made so far.
Yeah, Nick. The Texans have been doing a lot of really great stuff. I like the hire of DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco Ryans, a player who has started with the Texans, has a deep history with them. Great player, a lot of great players on that team. But we dive a little bit back further into the Texans' history. Young team, but still a lot of great players on that team. And that's why I want to know in the comments below, who is your quintessential Texan? Who's the guy that dons the Texans uniform and you think that is our guy? I know a lot of people are going to say JJ Watt's of the world, but there's a lot of other different guys out there. I think some really interesting answers. So let us know in the comments below who's your quintessential Texan. But Nick, who could be the new quintessential Texan?
Yeah, so obviously the Texans head into the offseason with a lot of different directions. They could go $40 million in cap room, according to overthecap.com. Number 2 overall draft pick, like I alluded to. A lot of options for the Houston Texans. And that's why it's a very interesting that starting a couple of days ago, we started hearing reports about a potential move that could make in free agency at the quarterback position. So it was first reported from CBSSports.com that they had sources saying that none other than former 49ers quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo would be interested in a reunion with guys like Nick Caserio, who drafted him and evaluated him with the Patriots. Obviously, DeMeco Ryans comes from the 49ers. And of course, the Texans brought a new offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick, who also had a relationship with Garoppolo in San Francisco. And here's what Slowick said very recently about Jimmy G, according at a press conference, quoting Slowick here, Mice, quote, "He's going to be a free agent. We grind through that as a coaching staff. We grind through that in the personnel department. We have conversations. I have conversations with Nick. He has conversations with DeMeco, and then Nick and DeMeco kind of put their heads together and lay out a plan and what we want to do going forward and see where that takes us." And Slowick went on to say that talking about Garoppolo is, quote, "obviously part of that process." All right, Mike. So there's been all kind of rumors and speculations about like Garoppolo joining the Houston Texans. I think this is a really smart decision for 2 reasons, Miles. It puts a lot of pressure on the other teams in the front end of the draft that want a quarterback. Because right now, everyone's just assuming the Texans are going to take a quarterback at number 2. They're not going to make, potentially trade at all. But right now, they're like, okay, Texans number 2, definitely a quarterback. But if the Texans sign Jimmy G, it will at least put a pause in other people's heads and like, maybe the Texans aren't taking a quarterback. Maybe they're going to trade back. Maybe they're a trade option. So a team that was maybe trying to trade up to say to number 3 may now have to think about trading up to number 2 or number 1 potentially, because a team after the Texans get Garoppolo may try and go up and take the Texans pick to potentially get a quarterback. A lot of options open up and a lot of paranoia starts to seep in some of these other general managers throughout the league's minds once they see the Texans get a quarterback in free agency. And I just love that, because one of the things I really love that teams do when they have a top 2 pick like the Texans here, though the Bears in this category, I love when they create chaos, because when chaos happens, the opportunity to make really smart, massive deals to benefit your team present themselves. The Eagles under Howie Roseman have done a great job of doing just that in his tenure. So I really think this is a smart decision to even just the rumors of it, but of course, if they go out and execute on it, by the Houston Texans to bring in a guy like Jimmy G. Give me your thoughts, Miles. What do you think of the Texans here getting Jimmy G or potentially not, or all the directions that could go in this offseason?
Yeah, no, I like the move, and not even just because it is Jimmy G and he's been a very consistent quarterback. He's had a lot of success in his career so far, but I like the fact that you bring this up because it does make that number 2 overall pick a lot more valuable if you bring in the quarterback. It's not so locked in that the
Yeah.
Texans are going quarterback. Like you said, either they trade up to 1 or get the second best guy at number 2. So like you said, teams like the Colts, teams like the Panthers, all these other teams out there looking for the quarterback are now like, well, 3 isn't safe anymore. It's either we trade up to 1 or we trade up to 2. So like, yeah, those are only 2 options. And I really like the move if you bring in a veteran guy, someone to get you to the next one, because this quarterback draft, there are some good guys in there. I think there are some guys that could be your franchise quarterback. But if you play the slow game, you trade back, get a little bit more draft capital, potentially draft capital for next year, something like that. Next year's quarterback draft seems like it all accounts that it will be better than this year's quarterback draft. You look at guys like Caleb Williams, Drake May coming in there. So there's something to think about there. I know, a bird in the hand's worth 2 in the bush. You don't want to think too far ahead into the future, but I like the move, potentially bringing in Jimmy G. I like the reunion There'll be a lot of continuity within the organization because of all of the San Francisco ties, the Patriot ties. But it really seems like a smart move, and the Texans just keep doing things, showing that they're really turning things around, and they're kind of just trying to make all kinds of smart decisions now.
Yeah, Miles, I don't want to leave you with this. So what happens in a quarterback heavy draft is teams sometimes get really aggressive and they overpay to move up, right? And sometimes they reach. We saw this a couple of years ago with the Jets with Zach Wilson, and we saw this with the San Francisco 49ers when they gave up a lot of draft picks to move up and take Trey Lance. Trey Lance, it looks like his career may be ending with San Francisco at this point. He hasn't turned out the way they had hoped at all. It looks like they may be going with Brock Purdy. And who knows better about being on the other side of one of those deals than guys like D'Amico Ryans and Slowick, who are with the 49ers, obviously, and were part of that transaction. They saw it firsthand. So they can have it. They see this potentially, in my mind, as to be on the other side of that and take advantage of a team reaching and trading up a lot to get a guy who maybe isn't worth it. Can you imagine, getting maybe 2 number ones from a team like the Panthers, who just, for whatever reason, falls in love with Anthony Richardson, even though he kind of stunk at Florida? I mean, would you trade back and take that 9? I take that 9 times out of 10. Oh, and that's what making a move for Jimmy G can really give you that opportunity. And that's why, like you said, Miles, I think it's a great point. This is yet another really smart move by the Houston Texans.